been teaching about change for a lot of years, and it seems like though the form stays the same, what comes out of my mouth is always changing because I'm changing. And those of you that do any kind of teaching or work with others know what I'm talking about. And what I've come to realize is that the changes never end. And that those of us that are on an evolutionary path consciously, I say consciously because everyone's on an evolutionary path, like it or not, we're all heading towards the same direction. Kicking and screaming, detours, or full steam ahead, that's where we're headed. So in the process of that, everything has to change. As we evolve and change the construct of thinking and vibration that we occupy, the landscape around us changes to align to who we have become. And what once felt absolutely right for the woman you are, the man you are, the lover, sometimes the work, the form, the place, the body, all of us, has to shift if you are paying attention and keeping up. So when change comes, welcome. Thank you. This is a sign that I'm growing. And be in the gravelly sandpaper of the rubbing against of who you're becoming and that old form saying, wait a minute, aren't I supposed to be doing dance camps at Camp Kenai? Maybe something else is pulling me forward. Don't I teach at Kripalu? So the change is a blessing and a gift, but it doesn't feel like a blessing and a gift unless we honor what is being released. And we have to be willing to let it go. And one of the gifts that I find really useful in releasing the old form that we're moving out of, sometimes it's moving out of us, by the way, is an attitude of gratitude. To turn and face who you used to be and bow and say, thank you, including to the lover who has abandoned you and the job you've been fired from. Thank you. Thank you for the gifts you gave me. Thank you for the good you brought to my life. And the other gift I find very powerful in releasing the past is to stand in the position of the wise man and the wise woman and claim your worth and the lessons you are taking. Because no experience is lost if we pull from it the depth of our own love and dignity and how that experience has turned us into a deeper, wiser, more spacious and present being. And I know many of you have gone through the end of love that you thought you had to survive. Or a job that you so identified with that it was like losing your own skin when you lost it. Or a place, perhaps a home. Some of you have been through life-threatening illnesses. I have, and it was a great blessing to know I might only have 2 weeks left to live and go, wow, okay, what if this diagnosis is true? What if in 2 weeks, poof, I'm on to the next thing? Have I lived the life that's right for me? And in that moment, which is just a big change, mirroring all the small ones that we go through, I got to stand and look back at my life and say what really matters are the people I've loved. Change is a cycle, and I divide it into 4 stages, but they really are all happening at once because in the world of quantum science, everything is happening all at once, which I find so phenomenal. I can't believe it's not on the front page of the New York Times and Time Magazine's cover every single week. Everything's happening all at once and we're all one. That's so important to pay attention to. And even those of us that are familiar with this principle, probably everybody here, we get it and we go, yeah, that's really interesting. God, that guy irritated me. Well, yeah, we're all really one, but will that person please get out of my... So in that reality, I like to step into change, and the cycle of change in which everything is happening at once unfolds itself in a pattern that I've noticed, and I'd like to share that with you. And the first part of the pattern is the ending of a form that you identified with as you. And God loves us so much that if we're staying with a person or a job or a place or a way of operating that really isn't aligned to our highest good, it will end through another person. We'll be fired, we'll be left, we'll be whatever. We'll have a health crisis to allow us to wake up and look at who we are and stand in our love and dignity. So the ending of a form that we identified with is the first phase of change. And that's where gratitude, honoring, welcome, and letting go is what serves us in letting go of that form. And it's the hardest when you've been the one who's getting dumped, the one who's being abandoned. Let go. But that too is the love of the universe helping you. And this is my belief, that we live in a beneficent, kind universe where we are being helped on our journey by forces seen and unseen, and being seen and unseen all the time. And so if we're not awake enough, and I've been there myself hundreds, thousands of times, to end a friendship that is really pulling us down or draining us, or move on from something that's no longer our highest good, then we get the 2x4 from the universe to help us move on. So it's not easy, but welcome the 2x4 and say thank you. What is it in Zen Buddhism? They have the big, I call it the wampum stick, with the Kyosaku, is that the Zen name? Where you're sitting on the mat, and if you start to go to sleep and you start to nod off, someone comes over and whomps you with the stick, and then they bow to you, and you have to turn around and bow to them, or you're like a bad Zen Buddhist. So you have to bow. And after we go through our first human reaction of outrage, pain, hurt, anger, grief, loss, which I think is important to allow the authenticity of that, because we are, after all, in bodies being human. I believe we signed up for that, so that's part of the experience. But once we get through enough of that stuff, it's time to turn and say, thank you. Thank you for waking me up. Thank you for helping me align to my real self, my worth, my value. Thank you. And here's what I've learned from being with you. Job, person, lover, place, illness. Here's what you've given me. And name it and own it, so you stand in your divine authority, your divine worth. There is dignity in suffering. There is dignity in crying your guts out. There is dignity in going through it. It has like a rich fullness, does it not? When you hold it that way. Be in your authority and your dignity. And when you've integrated your ending, you flow into the next phase of change, which I call the mystery, or the R&R phase. R&R standing for retreat and reflect. So when a form has ended, it's a wonderfully healthy thing to pull back from rushing into the next relationship, job, thing, doing, if you can, and find out, who am I right now? What's going on here? Before I go out and recreate again what I just left, who am I now? And that can feel like a time that can feel like breakdown and chaos. That's why I like the mystery, because the mystery gives it a dignified, gorgeous spin. I'm in the mystery. What are you doing? I'm in the mystery. Oh, what are you doing? I had a client once who was this big, wonderful, lovely type A woman. And I'd met her in a workshop I was giving at Kripalu, and then she came to do private sessions with me. And her first session, I opened the door, and she came in and sat on the couch. Beautiful woman, Ashtanga yoga teacher, tanned, lovely, very composed. And she arranged herself very lovely on the couch. And she said, I'm here because I want to move on. And then she immediately burst into uncontrolled sobbing, and I went, what we need is not to move on. We need to dive in and see what this is about. So as her story unfolded, she shared that she had been working in New York City across from the World Trade Towers. And she watched the morning of 9/11 as the planes hit the building. Can you imagine the trauma she'd gone through? And everyone gathered in her office, and they're looking out windows at people holding hands. I can hardly say it. and jumping. Now this beautiful, wonderful woman had grown up in kind of like a, up by your bootstraps Boston family where you don't feel your feelings and you get over it and you move on. So everyone in her family immediately was all over it, like, just move on, just move on, just move on. And she was trying desperately to recreate her work and her life. And she was in a relationship that was really not good for her, and trying so hard to move on, but she was in so much trauma she had to stop and go into the mystery phase and let go. And that's what our work was about, to help her there. And then she said, well, what do I do when I meet people and they say, what do you do for a living? And I don't know what to say because I'm not doing anything. I said, you are doing something. You tell them you're getting a PhD in transformation. And she loved that. Oh, I'm getting a PhD in transformation. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. The mystery. And how do you know? A woman in a workshop once said, Christine, how do we know when we're ready? How long do we have to spend in the mystery before we get to? And I said, exactly as long as you resist being there. So embrace it. I'm in the mystery. And I'm hanging here as long as I need to. And then phase 3, after you have completed integrating the past, and I say completed, we're talking 80%. My friends, we're not talking 100% because, as you know, you'll dip back and someone you thought you were over, suddenly a wave of grief comes up. Something you thought you were finished with, you'll notice you're really angry one day. That's being human. But when you do the 80%, you move into phase 3. And phase 3, I call the phoenix. And the phoenix phase, and I'm sure most of you know who the phoenix bird is. It's the mythological bird from ancient Egypt that rose and spread its wings and flew out of the ashes of what had been burned up. And guess what, folks? No ashes, no phoenix. So we've got to have the fire. That's all the angst and the struggle and the drama and the tears and the terror and the I don't know who the hell I am now. That's the fire, and it has to get burned all the way through for the ashes to let the phoenix of who you are fly into your next life. And that is the birth of new being. That phoenix bird is you. It's the new woman in you, the new man in you who wants to come forward and create your life anew, do something marvelous and inspiring and creative and wonderful. That's aligned to your evolutionary self, the higher self who's being born through you. If you don't let that higher self through, that new being, you are in disservice to all of us because we need you. We need you in that new being. So I'm heavily invested in this because you are part of me. So thank you, all of you, who have suffered and shed tears and gnashed teeth and wondered how you'll go on, and now you're here dancing this weekend. Thank you. And in the new being, a whole new way of working, loving, living comes forward that we can't know from the old consciousness. Quote from Albert Einstein, we cannot create solutions to our problems from the same consciousness that created the problems. So how does consciousness shift? Through the chemistry of going through the change process. That's it. So now you're in a new being, and suddenly you have infinite capability to create who you are in the world, how you express yourself. You are only as limited as your thoughts tell you. Only as limited as your thoughts tell you. And there are so many wonderful stories of people who have overcome extraordinary poverty and difficult conditions and traumas and being orphaned and abuse and become magnificent human beings holding a great big light out to the planet. And I know some of you know people like that and are those people. In fact, I would say that some of the greatest light givers, of which we all have an equal capacity, by the way, are the ones who have suffered and gone through that falling away of the old form, just the crystallization of who we used to be. And then out of new being, the phoenix, comes the next vision, the new, what I call the doing vision, distinct from the being vision, how I want to exist and be. Now comes the new way of doing. Well, I used to run these retreats like this, but now I think I'll do them like this. Or maybe I'll just go flip tacos in Brazil for a while. I don't know. Why not?